Hey, and we are live on this sunny afternoon with Nicole Campbell. Thanks for joining us, Nicole.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited.
So am I. So you are a commercial real estate associate with Divaris Real Estate. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And you're down in the Virginia Beach area, which I'm assuming is absolutely gorgeous right now.
It's beautiful. I need to be outside. I should be doing this from my backyard or something, or at the beach.
Well, you can see the sun coming in on me right now. That's my lighting's horrible, but I'm assuming it's not anywhere near as nice as it is down in Virginia Beach right now. So thanks for joining us. Really excited. I guess, first of all, what is Divaris Real Estate?
So Divaris Real Estate is a full service commercial real estate firm. And we have a commercial property management division, which is a huge part of what we do, managing the properties. And then on the other side of things, on the brokerage side of the house, as we say, the dark side, we have our leasing and sales associates. So we specialize in retail, office, investment sales. We don't do anything with multifamily, which is also a vertical of commercial real estate, but we do pretty much everything else. Wow.
And again, for everybody out there, apologies for COVID life, kids in the background. They're excited about going outside. So I'm really excited about this real estate aspect because I know it's been a crazy year for both commercial and residential real estate. But before we get into that, so we talked, you're an Army veteran, right?
I am, yes.
And I think we chatted ahead of time, you're an MP or were an MP.
Yeah. So, cringe moment for some people.
So how do you go from Army, MP, military police to commercial real estate?
It was a very long and winding path. I was also blessed to be an Army spouse. So when I got out of the Army, I did that. I got pregnant with my daughter, who's 20 years old now. But at the time, we were on rotations to Kosovo, and we were both MPs. And I said, you know what, I just can't deploy to Kosovo and leave my newborn baby with my parents back in the States. So I'll get out of the Army, and my husband stayed in. So I had no idea what I was going to do, of course. Just had a baby. And I went into a Red Cross program to be a dental assistant. So I did that for a while we were in Germany. We PCS to Ohio from there. And I went to college there at Youngstown State University, got my degree in family and consumer studies, which is basically home economics. Still had no idea what I was going to do. I just knew I needed a degree. We PCS to Fort Bragg, North Carolina. And from there, I did all kinds of things. I helped make designer jewelry with a company. I taught for a while. And then I got into real estate on the residential side of things. I was a transaction coordinator. I just literally did all the back end work when the transaction was basically into the contract period. Learned all of that and decided I needed to get my real estate license, and worked as a director of sales and marketing for a new construction team. Still just doing behind the scenes work. And then when we PCS to Virginia Beach, did residential real estate when I got here as well, but wasn't loving it. I wasn't passionate about it. And I had a friend of mine say to me, you know, your personality, you might consider commercial real estate. It's the B2B. It's just a different decision-making process. And that was about 5 years ago at this point. And I made the leap, and so here I am, long and winding, did all kinds of things, but now it got me to this point.
I love it. I love it. You know, honestly, it's very similar to a lot of the military spouse stories. You know, you hear, you move, and you do whatever you could find here, whatever you could find there. You go back to school. And I know a lot of spouses go back to school and get degrees, and they're like, that didn't translate to what I want to do. Yeah. And then eventually, if you continue working at it, you find something that you love. And I'm glad it worked out. I was curious about the residential to commercial aspect, but I could see there definitely is a difference. And we've got, Catherine said she had a similar story, came off active duty and was a military spouse. So that's great. So I guess let's get into the real estate piece. So what is the difference? I mean, you said you had a friend that said with your personality, you might be better suited for the commercial. What really is the difference between residential and commercial real estate?
Residential real estate, as it should be, is a very emotional decision-making process. It's a huge deal. People, and it should be. You walk in, you want to feel comfortable, and a lot of times you go with your gut. It's not always about the bottom line. So in commercial real estate, although there is an emotional portion to it, usually the decision-making process is black and white. Does it meet the budget? Does it meet, check the boxes for what we need in a space, and go from there? And there's not as much of that, oh, I don't like the fact that the current owner has Pittsburgh Steelers paraphernalia in this room, so I can't buy this house. I've heard it all. So that's just the part of it that I think, and then dealing with the businesses as well as dealing with a business owner is just a different than dealing with a consumer.
Right. No, I guess that makes a lot of sense. Now, I will tell you, if I went into a house that had Dallas Cowboys paraphernalia in there hanging up, I would buy it just to put Eagle stuff up in there and make the world great again. So I jokingly get it, but no, yeah. I never thought about it from that aspect, about how emotional it is and how unrealistic sometimes we can be. As having bought a home myself, I could see that. And as a business owner, yeah, you're right. It's a different kind of investment as well. You're investing company money that some of it can be a write-off, and you're really focused on different aspects. So is the process really that much different for the actual, purchase or rental? Do you do rent? When you talk about commercial real estate, are you talking about actually buying commercial real estate? Are you talking about, companies leasing it, or both?
Both, but the majority of what I do is on the leasing side. So it would be a business owner who needs an office space to run their business out of. And so the difference is, a lot of it is the timing. It can take anywhere from months and months and months to years to actually get a transaction completed. So we could start working with a group, especially if they're on the larger side, a 10,000 square foot office space. They need to be out in the market just looking probably 12, 18 months out, because you usually aren't going to find exactly what you need. And so then there's a construction period involved, and that's after negotiating a lease, which can be very time consuming. So it's just a very extended transaction time period. And that's what makes it a little bit difficult for people to get into commercial real estate, because for the time from starting to work and building up your book of business to getting paid can be can be extensive.
So I've noticed that as well. Although now you just terrified me, because I'm hoping to lease some space in the DC area this year. And I was like, well, we haven't started looking yet. And I hope it doesn't take 12 to 24 months. So is that an inventory thing, or is that really just the whole process just always takes a long time?
It's a little bit of both. So just depending on the size square footage that you need, and really kind of what in your market is everybody else going after. So it could be that there's a limited supply in that square footage range, or in that budget, that price point is the other part of it. And then again, just to the point of, it's not going to be exactly what you need, and every business is different. So just because the last user had a certain setup probably means that the next user is not going to be able to use that, and you kind of have to tear things down and start over again. So,
wow. Well, I'm glad we did this. So, all right. It's helpful for me. You don't happen to work up in the DC area as well, do you?
I have friends up there, so you just tell me what you need, and I'll get you hooked up.
We will be there soon. So, okay, cool. So, and then, so when we talk about what your day is like, the day of a commercial real estate associate? What's that kind of look like?
So I represent building owners and tenants. So there's a little bit of a back and forth between those two roles. But for the majority of it, I'm still doing taking time to do what we call canvassing or prospecting.
Mm-hmm.
So if I have spaces that I need to lease and find a tenant for, then I'm doing research to find tenants who I think would be a good fit. I'm making phone calls. I'm talking to business owners to see if they would have a requirement that would fit in that space. And then some other time would be spent if I'm representing tenants that I'm looking for in our database to see what is available, calling brokers to make sure it is actually still available, making phone calls to set up tours for tenants. So a lot of time spent on the phone in the office, but then you also have to be out driving around, seeing what's going on in the market, because what's reflected in a database online is, only half of the story. So we have to be out driving around. And so I think if somebody who doesn't want to be a desk jockey, as they call it, and sit behind a desk all day, commercial real estate is phenomenal, because you get to go out, drive around, see the market, see what's happening, keep your finger on the pulse of what businesses are doing. And it makes for a different day. You never have the same thing happen 2 days in a row. So
yeah, I love it. And you get to deal with all different kinds of people as well, right? So I can get the, like calling the brokers and, seeing what listings are available and driving around the area, seeing if there's anything that maybe has not been listed yet that's vacant. Without giving away your secret sauce, how do you find potential clients that may be looking that you don't already have? Like, how do you prospect that side?
Yeah. Interestingly enough, LinkedIn is huge for me. Commercial real estate is one of those things where typically people come into it right out of college. Maybe their parents were involved in commercial real estate somehow. They're from the area. Everybody knows them and knows what they do. So since I've only been here for 5 years, and I've only been in brokerage for, a portion of that time, I use LinkedIn to put myself out there and let people know what I do. And a lot of that is because people aren't always going to be ready to transact the moment that you talk to them. So just staying top of mind, making sure people know my name and associate me with commercial real estate. And then from there, it's just making those conversations with business owners. It may be that it's not anything that they need to do until 2 or 3 years down the road, but building a relationship based on probably meeting them on LinkedIn and starting it there. And then especially during these times when we can't get together in person like we used to and do networking events. And then the same thing goes for like having a good network who refers business to me. So I get quite a few people who will just send folks my way when they know that they're ready to do something. So I don't know that it's any secret different than what other people do. I just know that this is what works for me. And I guess I would be curious to hear how other people do it, honestly, because I kind of block that out and just do, what works for me and in my lane.
Well, I mean, I would tell you that I love what you just said. And understanding how the sales world works, you buy from who you trust, and trust comes from relationships. And so for you to be able to create relationships and expand a network, you have to be out there. And the more content, the more engagement, the more of these that you do, people start to know who Nicole Campbell is, right? So, I mean, right now, I know who you are, right? We've talked. And so that's a touch point. And the more that you do that, the more that people start to feel like when they think, you don't have to sell it, they think, commercial real estate, well, I know Nicole. And I feel like I trust Nicole because I see her on social media all the time. She's not trying to sell me, but, I see that work. What I don't really see work is the people that send out the mailers all the time. And, the stuff that I get and I just see is addressed to me and throw it in the trash. I think we've moved beyond that. So I'm excited to see you doing that. And I'm excited to see it work. So I haven't heard, but do you actually also prospect individuals, or do you do keyword searches or anything like that?
No, not necessarily. I try to just find people who are in interesting businesses that I think, that we would get along well too, because that's another part of it. Is just your personalities have to mesh. And if they don't, that's fine. But so finding people that you would like to work with. So industries that I think are interesting, like government contracting, I think is really interesting. Anything in the sports world, anybody who's a business owner who's really passionate about what they do, and I can see that they're really forward facing as well. I like working with those folks too, because I just know that we'll probably mesh really well. The other part of it too is being in a good network with brokers around the country. So with the internet and having the access like that, I'm able to team up with other people in other markets and I literally just got a phone call the other day from somebody in Charlotte who it's not going to end up being a referral for me, but it's going to be a referral for somebody else I know. And so just making those connections, I think is important, so that the next time when I do get somebody from Charlotte ready to do something in Virginia Beach, that I'm that person. So there's a lot that goes into it and I think it's an individual type of thing, whatever works for you and that you're going to be consistent with and be authentic with is just really how you need to move forward and not be too salesy, like you said. Like, why don't push the sale on people?
Yep. I one of my mentors when I started my business told me that he believes in just helping people, not asking for anything, not expecting anything. He's like, you'd be amazed how many times 2-3 years down the road you get a phone call and it's like, hey Ryan, or hey Mike, or hey Nicole, I got this, is there anything you can help with, or can I send it your way? And it's just karma, right? If you build relationships, if you're good to people, if you help others, then a lot of times it'll come back around to you. So that's exciting. Okay. So, but let's get into like what your day is. I understand, like from a residential standpoint, like their days are kind of wacky, because if you're showing homes, you may not be able to show them during the day. You may have to show them evenings, weekends, and everything else like that. What is a typical day like for a commercial real estate associate?
Yeah, so we call it kind of banker's hours, I guess, is when we would be setting up times for site tours, because it should be that a business owner, if they are serious about finding a space, that they are able to make time in the business day to do that. That's the expectation. So usually in the office, 8:30, maybe working on stuff till 5:36. It just depends on kind of how things have flowed. So that's kind of when you're with your customers, your clients, making phone calls or meeting with them. But then there's stuff that has to happen in times other than that too. So I do spend a little bit of time in the evenings and the weekends. I try to, not go crazy with it and make sure I'm present for my family as well. But it's just sometimes, like if I'm out driving around all day, that I now need to have some time to sit down and be at the computer. And so that just happens to be the time. But the customer time, the client time is 8:30 to 5:30 typically.
Yep. Typical banking hours. We've got a couple questions here. So Patrick wants to know, how do you vet home inspectors for your clients?
So I don't.
Yeah.
I don't.
I was going to say it's commercial. I'm assuming there's an inspection, right?
Yeah. So even on the rental side of things, if you're leasing space, depending on how the lease is structured, you could be on the hook for the HVAC and other mechanicals. So you would want to have an inspection done prior to taking that space. It's usually more in retail, but office, every once in a while, you could have that as well. And then definitely when you're purchasing, you would have an inspection done, all kinds of environmental, like big time expensive inspections, but that could save you a ton of money, by making sure that you don't purchase something that has a bunch of problems. So I don't deal with that as much. It's more of on the HVAC side.
But when they do need it, does the company have like a preferred list that they recommend, or does the person find their own? Or
so I usually work with some folks, again, that relationship is huge. And I don't like to call this one person, just in case, having a list of people that I trust. And then I say to my clients, okay, here's 5 people that you can call. work with the one that you would like to work with, depending on, whatever their prices or their responsiveness or whatever the case is. But I do that personally myself.
Right.
I do, try to stick with folks that I feel comfortable with.
That's awesome. So we've got another one. So Patrick says, with more companies switching to telework, do you think the commercial brick and mortar type of market is going to be overstocked and less in demand? The dreaded COVID question.
In my specific market, so I can speak to Hampton Roads, we aren't necessarily seeing that yet. Working from home is a big factor. People are trying to figure out for their business if they can reduce space, because it is efficient and effective to have employees work from home. So we do have people who are looking at downsizing, but as folks are downsizing or leaving, there are a lot of people waiting in the wings for opportunity that maybe they didn't have an opportunity before because a certain space wasn't available in a certain submarket or at a price that worked for them. And they're just waiting and backfilling those spaces for us. So we are a little insulated in Hampton Roads. We're not the big giant city with tons of people on top of each other. So it's probably different other places, but for us, I don't see that happening. We kind of like have that military presence too, and the government contractors and the government work and everything that's keeping people moving and working.
When they sign leases, what is the typical length on a lease?
Landlords usually like to see at least a 3-year lease if it's an as-is deal where they're not really putting a lot of money into the space. But for anything where they have to spend money to improve the space, or then at least a 5-year deal. So right now, maybe people can find some short-term stuff, but anything less than 3 years is considered short-term and is not something that a landlord typically wants.
I can see that. With everything happening in COVID, if somebody signed a lease, are they still on the hook? Is there like an environmental or like an act of God type clause? Like COVID happened, no one's in the office. Have people gotten out of leases? I don't want to get you in trouble or anything. So I don't know. Like,
no.
I mean, like, have companies just been like, hey, you've got 3 more years?
Yeah, that's it. I mean, there's force majeure language, which is a clause that will typically say, act of God, but that wasn't really something that was covered. So if a business can operate, and regardless if they're actually in the office or not, landlords they've tried to help if they can, but it's not something where they're going to let you out of the lease. The sublease is the next thing that would come. So if a client has 3 years left on their term and they really can't operate, and the landlord is saying, you know what, you're on the hook regardless, then they try to sublease their space a lot of times, which means that they would maybe offer it at a reduced rent so that they're not paying all of the rent. Somebody else will come in, take the space, and then pay a portion of it for them. So that's one way to kind of get around it.
So I guess maybe in some places around the country, we'll see what happens over the next couple of years as far as how the market shifts when these leases come up and who goes into it. I think you said something that was really interesting to me about people seeing it as an opportunity, that perhaps maybe prices go down, things get more favorable for businesses that are looking to expand, knowing that things will bounce back. I would like to think that I would be one of those at some point as well. So I could definitely see that. I guess we got another question for you from Robert. What's the commission difference between commercial and residential? Commercial sales are not as frequent as residential. Are you straight commission?
I am straight commission. Some people come in on salary plus commission. And that's usually, like I said, because it does take so long for things to close to help them get through those couple of years. And we can't say, our standard commission is X.
Yeah, I don't want to hear that.
Yeah. But so that's, to me, the big difference is just the timeline. And yes, usually the sales in commercial real estate are much larger. So it maybe takes 2 or 3 years, but then the commission's going to be, 10 times what it might be selling a house, depending on the market. Right. Leasing, we do get a commission on that. So that is more of a volume thing. That I'll help maybe 5 clients close a deal in 1 month, and maybe it's not a huge amount of money, but that's kind of, you get the volume part of it. So
right. That's awesome.
Mhm.
And then we have another LinkedIn user saying, do you think knowing other languages is an asset to being a commercial real estate agent?
I have definitely seen where that is the case, especially with if you are targeting a certain type of business who you would know that would typically speak whatever language that is a huge asset.
Mhm.
We are over and above white male dominated in our industry. So anybody who can do something different to attract other businesses to help them, be it, just being a woman or speaking another language, I think it's helpful and it helps set you apart.
Yeah, I can see that. And hopefully more military spouses are watching this and realize that the real estate industry could be a great avenue for them as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, so a couple things as we get close to 30 minutes. What would be your advice to anybody that wants to go into the commercial real estate industry?
My advice would be to talk to a firm that is a full service firm like Divaris Real Estate, because it's not just brokerage. There's the property management side has a lot of stuff that you could get into as well. There's lease administration, accounting, a lot of back end people that are really, really important, and they're in commercial real estate instead of, looking at multifamily residential, that type of thing. And just seeing at kind of what avenues are out there and what different firms offer as far as jobs and ways to get into it. So I started at Divaris as a administrative assistant to learn the business. So there are definitely roles like that too, where you can learn while getting paid, instead of going straight into a commission based kind of program. So I am happy to talk to anybody about what I do and hook you up with other people in the industry who could answer questions as well, because I do want to see some more diversity in commercial real estate. I think it's needed, and it would only help our industry. So I'm happy to be a resource in any way possible. I have a lot of people too, like I said, having that network around the country is big for this, because being spread out as military folks are, my experience will be different than what somebody's experience in Phoenix or, someplace else. So I can hook people up with those folks as well.
I love it. And I think you're right. That could be a huge benefit, building that network, especially for a service member, veteran, military spouse that's been all over the country. And you answered number 2, which was how can people reach out if they have questions? So thank you for that. I guess the last question I would have is, what would be your top 1 to 2 pieces of advice for service members that are getting out and trying to figure out what's next? Maybe learning from your experience. And then the same thing for military spouses that have moved around similar to what you had experienced and trying to figure out what's next for them.
Mm-hmm. So I will pull from my husband's experience of, he retired a couple years ago. Start early, really evaluate what you enjoy doing in life, things that pique your interest, that maybe it's a hobby that you want to figure out how to turn that into getting paid to do that hobby or whatever it is, but just start early. Because the longer you wait, the more freaked out you get, and the harder it is to focus on what it is you want to do.
Can I ask what early means to you?
Oh, so early would mean to me probably like 2 years at least from the time that you're,
Some people have different concepts of early, like, I'm starting 6 months out. I'm like, no, you're way behind the power curve. So great. So start early. What else?
And then, so for military spouses is kind of the same thing. Just if you have what I called a luxury of being able to bounce around and try new things, because my husband was still in the military and we knew it was a steady paycheck, and that we weren't dependent exactly on, everything that I was bringing in, that I took that time to explore a bunch of different avenues. And then it took a while, but I landed on something that I think worked out perfect for me and for our lifestyle and the things that we're doing right now with having kids and where we're living. And it meshes. It takes some time, but do as much as you can. Get paid to try new things.
I love it. I think, when I talk to a lot of people as they're going forward, nothing makes sense, right? Like they didn't plan to go this way. And then when you look back, you realize that all those different things that I did really led to where I am today. Mm-hmm. It seems like that's the case for you. You got to try a whole lot of different things, but that, gave you the tools you needed and the experience to be successful in commercial real estate.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, Nicole, anything else you'd like to share with our viewers, I guess?
I just want to say again to you, I love what you're doing. I think it's really important that there are folks like you who are helping our service members and military spouses just figure things out. I wish I had this kind of thing when I was, figuring it out too. Wish my husband did a couple years ago. Or whenever he was getting ready to retire, it would have been really helpful because I know those classes he went through did nothing. So thank you for what you're doing. I really appreciate it.
Oh my God. It's my pleasure. And for what it's worth, I went through the same thing. I had to figure it out for myself. And I think what we all agree on is if we can make it easier for those that come after us by sharing our experiences, then that's worth everything. So
yes.
Nicole, please get down to the beach. It is gorgeous out there. You live there. Don't let it go.
Okay.
And have a great day.
Thank you. You too.
All right. Bye.
Bye.